Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Overwrite, the podcast that features your fiction. I'm Elise, and I am excited to introduce our first story from prompt number 2. This story is by Krystin Hart, and yes, that may sound familiar. She did indeed have a story in the prompt 1 week as well. You can still find Krystin at KrystinHart11 on Twitter. And this time, this Iowa resident has let us know that she is a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan. So let's check out her story. Solitude by Krystin Hart. The ground shook slightly, rousing Malloy from her deep sleep. The sun had left her feeling lethargic and slow to move. It was a few minutes before she mustered enough energy to remove her sleep mask and turn over on her new pink beach towel. She looked up at the blue sky, then to the calm, blue lake in front of her. She thought she must have imagined the movement, because her world seemed to be in order. The beach was now empty, though when she had arrived, it had been bursting with tourists getting ready for a long weekend at the lake. There had been kids screaming and running through the water, parents setting up picnics, grandparents helping with sandcastles, and teenagers searching for someone to flirt with for the weekend. Though Malloy appreciated the solitude, she wondered why everyone had left so early. The sun still hung high in the sky. No sign it was getting late. The sky did appear a little hazy, and she wondered about a storm rolling in. She would stick it out until the rain started. She was lucky to have a nice beach all to herself. Between roommates and coworkers, Malloy never had a quiet moment. That was the reason Malloy came to the lake by herself for the weekend, and she was getting exactly what she wanted: privacy. She removed her earbuds and applied some more sunblock. It was hotter out today than originally forecasted. The sun was causing a pink tint to her skin already. She knew she would probably be red and sore tomorrow. After her lotion was applied, Malloy relaxed back down onto her beach towel and picked up her new book. As she read, sweat continued to trickle down her face. As she reached chapter 2, she wasn't sure how much longer she would last until she had to go back to her cabin for a little shade. She was beginning to experience the first signs of heat stroke. The smell of smoke soon filled the beach. A small patch of grass to her right began to smolder before bursting into flames. Malloy jumped up from her towel and tried to use it to put out the fire. All around her, more patches of dried brown grass began to smoke and ignite. Malloy knew that she couldn't handle a fire this big on her own, and she screamed for help. Soon, fire surrounded Malloy on all sides. She was unsure of how to get out of this predicament. The haze then moved from the sky, and a large black disk appeared. It was attached to a black hose. Malloy's face twisted in terror before she screamed and passed out. White foam began to fill the space, burying Malloy. When the white substance ceased, a giant hand reached down and scooped up her body. The little girl holding Malloy began to cry. She had worked so hard on this one's habitat. She had painted the walls to look exactly like that beautiful beach the human loved. She made the water in the lake look real, and brought some sand with the woman when she chose her. She ran to her mother and father and begged them to save her new pet. This time would be different. She would keep this one alive. Her mother and father sighed. This new habitat had come with a warning to keep out of the starlight. The top was magnifying and was known to start fires if left to sit too long with the light streaming in. They had reminded her several times, but the little girl was no good with her pets. The mother squinted down at the tiny human and saw a slight rise and fall of the chest. She assumed this pet was fine, for now, though, with her daughter's track record, she wasn't sure that would be true for long. She cleaned the tiny thing up and placed her in the spare habitat that they had thought to get this time. The ground shook slightly, rousing Malloy from her deep sleep. The sun had left her feeling lethargic and slow to move. It was a few minutes before she mustered enough energy to remove her sleep mask and turn over on her new pink beach towel. She looked up at the blue sky, then to the calm blue lake in front of her. She thought she must have imagined the movement because her world seemed to be in order, even though she had just had the weirdest dream. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I love that plot twist. I was not quite ready for a tiny human pet to be the main character, and I love it. Tune in tomorrow and see what else we have for this fire extinguisher, sunny, and complete terror-filled prompt. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Overwrite, the podcast that features your fiction. I'm Elise, your host, and I am excited today to share with you a very short story. This is by Liz Pasadena of Florida. Missing by Liz Pasadena. Sophia tugged on the heavy metal door that opened to the corridor of the math hallway. She glanced down at the floor mat to see whether it had been cleaned the night before. It had. That meant the regular custodian was back at the school, and that meant that the desks would be clean. He was so good about wiping everything down every day, and Sophia noticed when he was gone. As she paused to dig her room keys out of her purse, she noticed that the fire extinguisher case in front of her was empty. The graffiti-covered glass was intact, but the extinguisher itself was gone. At her desk, she called the front office. "Hi, Nicole, it's Sophia. I just wanted to let you know that the fire extinguisher in our hallway is missing." Sophia paused. "No, there's no mess. The glass is still there. It's just gone." Sophia laughed in response to Nicole. "That is the truth. Have a good one." Shaking her head as she placed the phone down, Sophia couldn't help but imagine the trouble some student would be in once the discipline office reviewed the security footage of the hallway. Then, she busied herself with emails and lesson plans until the bell rang for the first class. "Brendan, can you please show the steps for problem number 2 on the—" A loud boom from the hallway interrupted Sophia just a few minutes into first period. She rushed to her door and peered through the narrow window. In the hallway, with sunlight streaming from behind him from the window in his classroom, Mr. Walbaron stood, silhouetted. Sophia could hear laughter from the room behind him, even through her closed door. As she opened her door, Mr. Walbaron turned to face her. He was covered in a wet, white foam. It lumped up on his head and shoulders, then dribbled down his round stomach. His face, redder than Sophia had ever seen it, shone through the melting foam, and his chest rose and fell with deep, short breaths. Sophia couldn't determine whether he was terrified or enraged, or both. Sophia nodded slowly at him, then said, "I'll call," as she turned back into her own room. "Nicole, it's Sophia. Do you remember that fire extinguisher I called about earlier?" Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening this week. This is actually our final story. I only received 2, so I can only narrate 2. Check back this Friday for a new prompt, and please join these writers in entering next week.